Alrighty. The tech issues have been resolved. And so with that, we'll get this meeting started. We're going to start with an invocation, which we observe by a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Corliss. Here. Halliburton.
Here.
Morales.
Here.
Nash.
Here.
Stead.
Here.
Willits.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. We've got minutes to approve from July 9th.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the minutes for the work session regular meeting of July 9th, 2024.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk?
Morales.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
Stead.
Yes.
Willits.
Yes.
Corliss.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion passes.
And now we have some very special business. We have Chief Weiniger is with us tonight to present an award for exceptional service to David Buczynski. Oh, there you are.
Madam Mayor, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to take a couple of minutes tonight. I appreciate that. I have been to places of business, I've been to residents' homes, and I have been to even the Ada County Victims Justice Center to present tokens of our appreciation and awards to people for various things over the last few years. Tonight, I thought it would be appropriate to invite David Buczynski to come here and be recognized in front of the entire city and the city council and city leadership for an act of, frankly, bravery and heroism, if I might go that far. And I am going to read the narrative for our Exceptional Service Award. In this case, it will be brief, but I think it's worth sharing with everyone tonight. On June 5th, 2024, shortly before 10:30 a.m., Corporal Brad Griffin and Officer Garrett Miller responded to a report of a male subject with a knife near Americana Boulevard and Shoreline Drive. Dispatch received information that the subject was covered in blood and possibly in crisis. Before the officers arrived on scene, the subject had crashed his vehicle into multiple other vehicles in Boise. A witness, Mr. David Buczynski, saw the subject crash into a vehicle on Americana Boulevard before pulling over to the right shoulder near Shoreline Drive. The subject exited his vehicle and began to stab himself in the neck. Mr. Buczynski yelled at the subject to stop, which led to the subject throwing the knife he had on the ground. Mr. Buczynski picked up the knife and moved it away from the subject to ensure he could no longer harm himself. Officers arrived on scene and were able to take the subject into custody without further incident, and he was taken to a hospital for treatment. Upon further investigation, officers learned the subject was also involved in a violent altercation with family earlier in the day. We are thankful for the quick and thoughtful actions of Mr. Buczynski, who helped de-escalate a violent situation and ensured the safety of the subject and everyone in the area. For his quick response and life-saving efforts, Mr. David Buczynski is presented a Boise Police Department Exceptional Service Award.
Congratulations. And Chief, thanks for doing this presentation here so that we too can say thank you.
Madam
Thank
Mayor.
you. They don't happen all that often, but when they do, I think every once in a while it might be worth doing right here in this chamber, if that's okay. Appreciate it.
Madam Mayor, David, I've been on city council for 5 years now. This is the first time I've had seen the chief present one of those to an individual, let alone on a big budget hearing day. So it's a big deal. And I know that, the chief doesn't take that situation lightly, or your acts lightly as well. A lot of times I wonder, what is it about some people that when they see something happening, decide to engage and help rather than disengage and run the other way. And I really do believe that courage is contagious. And when people see you do it, they know that they can do it as well. And it makes a difference, potentially saves lives. So I just want to say thank you one more time for stepping up when a lot of other people would have stepped away, and for demonstrating that courage and for being a great community member here in Boise. Thank you.
I think that was well said. Thanks so much. Thanks for being here, and for everything you did. Appreciate it. And also feel free to leave. You're welcome to stay. But I don't want you to sit in the back wishing that you could leave and think that you shouldn't. So you've done much great work. But you were welcome either way. So thank you very much. We're going to move ahead with item number 2, and this is the appointment of David Hasegawa to serve as our city treasurer.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent for the appointment of David Hasegawa to serve as city treasurer.
Without objection. There's no objection. All right, David, come on up. Thank you for your willingness to serve in this role. It's an important role. I know you've got some comments to share with council and the community. But before that, I really appreciate that you've stepped up and you'll be serving as our treasurer.
Yes, well, Madam Mayor, members of council, I'm honored and grateful to accept the position. And I look forward to, I live here in Boise, and so I look forward to being able to serve my neighbors as long as I am needed in this capacity. I've been privileged to serve in the DFA for the last 5 years and serve with the very best teammates anyone could ask for. And I will add that fulfilling the fiduciary duty that comes with Treasury, the treasurer, is not possible without all of finance. And so I want to thank in particular Linda Lowry, who is clerking today, my boss, as well as my team, Rose, Leslie, and Zach, for all of their hard work in helping to fulfill the duties of the office of the city treasurer. And thank you, Mayor and Council, for this appointment.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to quickly add, I have the pleasure of working with David on the Harris Ranch CID. So I feel like I know your work well, and I'm so grateful that you're willing to lend your service in a greater capacity here. We're lucky to have you. I know we're in good hands. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, if I could just add a couple words. Beyond being extremely intelligent, one of the things I really appreciate about you is that you're extremely professional. Everyone that you engage with, I think that there's a level of trust that they have with you because they know how seriously you take your job, how much you want to do it well, and how much you value doing it well for them, doing it well for the community. And so I just want to thank you for that professionalism, for that community mindedness, and congratulations on the spot.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Council, thank you.
And next, we have Jamie Heiserling. I'm proposing that we appoint her as our city clerk in an official capacity. You've been serving as our clerk for quite a while. But this has added responsibility with the official capacity that will come with this, and really appreciate your willingness to step up in this way too.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent for the appointment of Jamie Heinzerling to serve as city clerk.
Without objection. All right, it's official. Jamie, would you like to say anything?
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. I just really want to say thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate it, and I am honored to accept this new role, which I have been serving at in some capacity, although there are some additional responsibilities. But I really appreciate your trust in me to be able to fulfill the responsibilities and the duties of this position. It means a tremendous amount. My commitment to the city, to the employees and its citizens drives me every day and drives my team every day to do the best that we can. And I really look forward to working with all of you even closer than I am today to achieve the goals of the city, including transparency, which we talked about earlier in our work session with regards to records, creating a safe and healthy environment for all of our citizens, in a community for everyone, engaging our stakeholders and having, additional communication and feedback from them, and just continuing to serve this great community in these and other capacities. So thank you again for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, and if I
Yes.
could again, Jamie, I just want to say thank you for the continued service. I would say congratulations, but it's kind of the same thing, but congratulations. You certainly deserve to be in this role, and it's because you care about the community. One of the funny things I think about your position is that you take on some of the biggest issues in the city and then some of the smallest issues, these really tiny, kind of minute things, but like put the same care into either one of them, no matter what, and make sure that you're doing it right. You're doing it right the first time, that we engage well. And I just want to thank you for that diligence, whether it's the big ones or the small ones. Always putting your best foot forward. So thank you.
Thank you. And both of these employees are part of the Division of Finance. And I'm going to take a point of personal privilege since we have the director here, Linda Lowry, serving as clerk this evening. I'd say it's your last city council meeting, but it might be your first in this capacity too. No, that's not true. You've been with us, especially during COVID. But this is the last time we will see Linda in her role here at the city and in the council chambers. And she's retiring at the end of the month. And I want to thank you for your service, for the support that you've provided to these folks. And I think you can see in the comments that we heard from them today, what a great team that you've built. And the support you provided us as we seek to serve our residents is noteworthy and notable. And I really appreciate it. And I wish you, as I've said personally, the best of best retirements. And I'm so excited for you. And now we're going to move on with the appointment of Sean Wilson to serve as our Director of the Planning and Development Services Department. I'm going to ask, and with this one actually, because staff, we need a motion. I will say in putting this appointment forward that I'm deeply grateful to Sean and the service he's provided to the city for years, and the work that he's done side by side with folks in the Planning and Development Services Department and in Public Works Department, and all of us and members of the community to build good plans and execute on them to serve the city. And as our community moves in, especially in this department, into implementation mode after the deep and tough and exciting work that was done to update our zoning code and to prepare plans for the future, I believe that Sean is the right person to support the team, to help us implement the zoning code successfully, and as part of that, to look at what's working and what's not, make sure that we get it right, and support all the folks in this department, whether it be planning, building services, housing. You heard from Maureen earlier today, as they seek to support our goals and vision of the city of Boise. And with that, I'm really honored and pleased to submit for nomination Sean Wilson to serve in this role.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the appointment of Sean, or I move for the appointment of Sean Wilson to serve as the Director of the Planning and Development Services Department.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I just echo your comments and say that looking forward to Sean taking on this new role at the city. I think he is a steady hand that's going to serve us well and do what we need to do in PDS. My favorite part about Sean is, although he works in Public Works, he has responsibilities all over the city. So sometimes at the library, I'm like, what are you doing at the library? Or what are you doing in parks right now? So he brings a wealth of knowledge, had high marks from both supervisors and subordinates in his work in Public Works, and just excited for him to take on this new role at the city.
Madam Mayor, I was going to save my comments for afterward, just in case. But no, Sean, I'm going to say congratulations preemptively. I have no doubt that you're going to get our vote here. I want to tell you the thing I appreciate about you the most, and the thing that I think is going to make you so good at this position. When people are talking to you, you listen, and you listen deeply. And it's not an act. You're actually doing it because you truly want to understand what their concerns are, what they have to say, and you want to work with them to come up with a solution. I think that's why, as Council President Nash said, you've worked with so many different departments, is that they know if we want a problem solver, you're going to be the person that we need to plug in with a different department to get their feedback and to work with them to solve the problem. And you're going to be able to take all those skills into PDS. I'm excited because we actually probably get to see you a little bit more often here now at Council, I hope. And I know that you're going to do a great job here. I know that you're going to do a great job empowering your team as well. You're the right person for this position, and I'm so thankful that you both applied for it and that you got it. Congratulations. Thank you so much.
All right, clerk, will you call the roll?
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willetts.
Yes.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Well, congratulations, Sean. Come on up. I know. Oh, can we turn on the public mic, please? I don't know. Maybe we're just supposed to turn it on ourselves.
Here, council
Oh,
members.
there we go.
Oh, there we go.
I've been talking
you.
to the room.
So I just have a few words I wanted to share. It's been an honor to serve the city and our community for the last 10 years. And it's going to be an even greater honor to serve as a PDS director. Looking forward to it. I'm grateful for all the trust placed in me by council members for all the work I've done historically for the past 10 years. I know I've been here a lot for different departments, kind of working across the city. So it's really neat to see that trust developed, and I'm eager to contribute to that continued success for our organization. Throughout my career at the city of Boise, I've been driven by a passion for service and commitment to the community. I've had the privilege of working along dedicated city staff across every department and seeing the contributions of all our team members and what they do for the city and the positive impacts. With my skill set, I'm going to bring a consistent approach to implementing large and complex jobs. I've done it historically, and I think with the new zoning code, it's time to implement something very large and complex. And I'm the person for it. I just said. I believe in fostering a culture of collaboration where diverse perspectives are valued and respected. So I appreciate your comment, Councilmember Halliburton. When I look across the city, the collective expertise of staff, of the council, of stakeholders, all of that is very important on how you make decisions. And lastly, I'm humbled by the opportunity to serve alongside each of you and all my fellow team members moving forward in the future. And I look forward to the challenges and successes that are coming, hopefully more successes, but I suspect a lot more challenges. And with your support and collaboration, I'm confident we could achieve great things for the community and leave a lasting legacy. So one thing that's really important to me is leaving a legacy the best we can for the city of Boise. So I'm excited to continue working together, and thank you so much for letting me have this role.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much. We all look forward to working with you.
It'll be great, man.
All right. That's it for special business. All that was pretty special. We'll move into the consent agenda.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and second discussion. Clerk?
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willetts,
Yes.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
All right, thank you. And now we will move into public hearings, the new business portion of the meeting. The first one that we have tonight is CAR 24-2. It's JUB Engineering. So we've got, hello, welcome. We've got city staff. Is the applicant here? Is the applicant online? All right, well, we will go ahead and hear, is anybody here to testify on this one? That is likely why the applicant's not here. We'll go ahead and hear from staff, the presentation, and we'll check after staff is done to see if anybody's online.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. The item before you is CAR 24-2. This is an annexation request for approximately 76 acres with a zoning designation of I2/A1 or AIO, excuse me, located at the southwest corner of the intersection of South Warehouse Way and East Freight Street. The subject parcel is under the jurisdiction of unincorporated Ada County and is currently zoned M3. within Boise's area of impact. The parcel abuts the city of Boise boundary on the east side and is surrounded on the other three sides by unincorporated Ada County. The applicant proposes to annex the subject property to construct a new water treatment facility to serve existing and
Goodness,
future
goodness,
industrial
goodness. I saw
uses.
JUB Engineering, but really the city of Boise is the applicant.
Madam Mayor.
You could have just told me that right away. It's okay to tell me that I've really messed up.
Madam Mayor, this is the city of Boise
Okay,
application.
so I guess JUB Engineering is our designer, et cetera, but we are the applicant.
Madam Mayor,
right.
That's correct.
So I haven't done one of these in a long time. You're speaking for the city. Is Steve speaking or is JUB speaking or is ultimately, if that's fine. Okay, you're doing both. Great.
Madam Mayor, yes.
Maybe maybe
I'll get the presentation to answer questions.
Go ahead.
Okay, all right. The applicant proposes to annex the subject property to construct a new water treatment facility to serve existing and future industrial uses in the area. This area is with the airport influence area and allows for non-noise sensitive manufacturing industrial as well as commercial uses and will require a navigation easement on the property. The proposed zoning designation of I-2 is appropriate for the proposed use and location of the property, and all agencies indicate that services can be provided. Further review will be conducted with subsequent applications. After the planning and zoning hearing, the comments were received from ACHD and DFA indicating that there were no concerns with annexing and servicing the property. ACHD also included findings for consideration referencing the future Lake Hazel Road extension and future reviews. And in conclusion, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Madam Mayor, I've got a quick question.
Yeah.
So ACHD, I read through the report, wanted us to consider the Lake Hazel extension, but they didn't actually have any concerns. They just wanted us to be aware, or were there actual concerns that they had?
Madam Mayor, council members, ACHD essentially said that the annexation was appropriate and just to be aware upon future development that the Lake Hazel extension should be considered when developing that site.
And that there might be a little bit of an increased setback for future development or something like that?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, that's correct.
Great, thank you.
Madam Mayor, I know that we've had annexation as sort of a hot topic on our agendas this summer. Can you give us just a high level overview why this? I know in previous conversations, the financials have really come into play and we've been hesitant to move forward at the expense of current taxpayers. Can you explain how this is different, or is it a different level of services required? Is there different funding, considerations, I guess, taken into account?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, council members, that's a great question. So the subject property is right adjacent to an urban renewal district, which will be supporting a lot of the industrial development in that area for their water recycling facility. Additionally, this is not a residential development, so it has very different impacts on traffic and other considerations for such as cost. So I think that's the main reason that this is a more appropriate site than some of the other annexation requests we've had recently.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Jesse, do we have any reason to believe that the Lake Hazel extension would interfere with development of any type of water treatment facilities on the site?
Madam Mayor, council members, again, ACHD did look at this property and indicate that the Lake Hazel extension would be appropriate where it is indicated on the map. Additionally, the water treatment facility is still in design. So understanding that the Lake Hazel extension will ultimately end up in this location, it could be designed around.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, another question about that extension. So in the future, that extension is not programmed now. Would ACHD be buying that right of way from us in the future? How does that work?
Madam Mayor, council members, that would be a dedication to ACHD. So that would likely be with the conditional use permit required for the water treatment facility is when that would be dedicated.
Thank you. I am going to open the public hearing. Anybody testify? Any further questions for staff? I'm going to close the public hearing. I'll say a couple things about this because I would have at the beginning had I not been distracted by JUB engineers. This is an exciting advancement. The people of Boise voted over 80% to support a clean water and climate action bond. This is putting that bond to work. And the council approved the purchase of this land, and now we're taking the next step to annex this and get ready to build what will be a state-of-the-art water renewal facility that'll make it possible for us to keep our water clean, reuse water for business. So we're using as much water as possible that's fresh out of the ground for drinking. And this is a key step that also does keep open the option for the important Lake Hazel extension in the future, and a partnership with ACHD there. So appreciate the work that went into finding this spot that is right for the city, P&Z's approval of the proposal, and then all the staff work that got us here tonight. Thank you very much. The hearing's closed, so I'm happy to entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of CAR 24-2, request for annexation of approximately 76.31 acres with a zoning district of I2/AI-O, industrial heavy with airport influence overlay at the southwest corner of the intersection of South Warehouse Way and East Freight Street, based on the reason statement outlined in the staff report.
Second.
We have a motion, a second discussion?
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I would just reiterate everything that you've already said. You said it so well. And I would just thank the staff for all the work that went into this. It's a complex thing, making sure that it's going to work, that it's the right location, that it's going to serve the other uses, that it's going to serve our long-term goals. And I don't think anybody realizes how many steps it takes even just to get right here. And this is just one more step, and there'll be more steps to come. So appreciate the hard work so far, and appreciate, and I'm confident in the hard work going forward. But this is a big deal, and it should be celebrated by your team.
All right, clerk.
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willetts. Yes. Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. All right, now we're going to move into the budget hearing for the fiscal year 2025 budget hearing. As Eric's walking up, Eric's got a presentation for us. I want to thank in advance, in case I forget to thank at the end, all of the staff work that, excuse me, went into this. Really appreciate it. You see some of our department directors and others from our finance department and other departments here with us tonight. I'm really proud of the work that we've done together with council, my office, with our city departments, and most importantly with our residents to develop this budget. And in this budget, as we've talked about in the work sessions, we're taking care of people both in our community and within these buildings that serve the people of our community. And we'll be able to talk about pools and parks and housing and tax relief and so many things that each of you has been a part of creating. And I'm really excited about what's ahead and the presentation that Eric's now going to share with us, as well as answering any questions as we move forward. So welcome up here.
Thank you very much. Madam Mayor, members of the council, it's my pleasure to present the fiscal year 25 proposed budget in advance of several public hearings that we'll be having this evening. I'm going to do an overview. Before we enter into the public hearings, I'll first focus on some of the themes and strategies that went into the fiscal year 25 proposed budget. We'll do a citywide summary and have a discussion on general fund revenues, general fund expenditures, and then do a capital fund overview. After that, we would be looking to have a public hearing on the fiscal year 25 budget itself, as well as foregone property taxes. Subsequent to that, I'll do a brief overview on fiscal year 25 proposed fee changes, and then we'd be looking for a public hearing, and then an overview on development impact fees, and then our fourth public hearing of the evening.
I just have a question, Eric. That's all one agenda, but are you planning on presenting the fees and charges separately, the impact fee separately, or doing all the presentation now, and then we'll open it up to public hearing separately for all the things?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, members of council, I would do an overview on everything related to the first two public hearings.
Great.
And then do a separate presentation after
Okay.
on the other two
Thanks.
items. So just a reminder as to the process that we've gone through to get here this evening. We've been at this for many months, beginning in February with our first presentation to the council, when we did an overview of the budget process. We came after that with overviews of the capital fund, with property taxes. In May, each of the department directors presented to the council as part of our first budget workshop. Then we released the budget document mid-June and followed that up with our second budget workshop at the end of June. And that's from a city council perspective. From a public perspective, we made available the budget website in April. That website provided an opportunity for the public to provide commentary on the city's strategic priority areas and how the budget could have an impact within their lives. We've shared that input with the council throughout the budget process. So as we look at some overall themes and strategies. So first off, just a reminder, the budget document was released on Friday, June 14th. The document is available on the city's website. It's also posted as part of this evening's agenda for any interested community members. In addition to allowing an opportunity for folks to provide their feedback or testimony through the website, there's also an opportunity for the public to interact with the current year budget through the city's budget transparency tool known as Open Book, and that is available and updated on a monthly basis. So as we look at the environment in which this budget was developed, I'm going to talk about a few different themes. First, on rising costs and budget uncertainty. This budget was developed in kind of uncertain times. Inflation, to be sure, is cooling. To remember that the adjustments that were built into this proposed budget are not real time. We're effectively catching up from assumptions made a year ago. So those inflationary adjustments sometimes might feel bigger than we might be hearing on the news and so on and so forth. The economic climate is not entirely clear as we look forward to the next year. So we've ensured that we built in sufficient reserves and achievable revenue estimates. We knew going into this budget cycle that we may have less budget flexibility as compared to prior fiscal years, primarily because we knew that we'd be opening a new firehouse, a new fire station in fiscal year 25. So Fire Station 13 is coming online in the Northwest, and we had built in flexibility to allow for that in prior years. When we build the annual budget, we're not only looking at the most immediate fiscal year, but we're taking a long-term view as well to ensure that any adjustments that we recommend are sustainable over time. We know that there are numerous things that are going to need to be brought forward for investments in the community in the future. And some of those needs are known but not quite quantified. So we have done our best to allow flexibility, to allow certain needs in the future, things like police, fire, and library staffing, as well as some of the core needs like software, benefits and compensation adjustments, and insurance needs. I just mentioned that we do a 10-year forecast. We, per state law and city code, we need to ensure that we are balanced in the general fund as part of the budget process. But we also look to ensure that we're balanced over a longer period. So within the general fund, we do a 10-year forecast. As we look out based on our best estimates as to activity for what we know now, we would anticipate that the general fund would remain in a positive position throughout that 10-year period. There are various investments that are included in this budget to advance community priorities, things including housing, climate, transportation, ensuring economic opportunity, health and safety, as well as parks infrastructure. And there are also investments made to modernize core operations through things like evolving staffing structures and new technology platforms. Going back a little bit to some of the cost growth that I mentioned, we are seeing in numerous categories costs rising in excess of the 3% base growth level that is allowed for property taxes. So I'll focus on just a few, and these are illustrative. There are other examples across the organization. As we look at software, for instance, costs in fiscal year 22 and 23 were approximately 70% higher than the average spend between fiscal years 2017 and 2019. As we look at fuel, about 60% higher over that same period, and insurance about 50%. Retirement contributions are increasing as mandated by PERSI, 10.5% year over year for public safety, 7% year over year for general employees. Cumulatively, the increases approximate about 1.5 million. That's roughly equivalent to a 0.8% property tax increase. You may recall that earlier in the spring, we did a comprehensive overview of the capital fund. At that time, we talked about the cost escalation that we're seeing associated with our projects, our major equipment, and major repairs. If we look at the rate of cost escalation as compared to the contributions into the capital fund, there exists approximately a 25% gap. One last piece on some budget assumptions. The figures that I'll be presenting as part of this presentation reflect the what was included in the fiscal year 25 proposed budget document, as well as changes that were proposed by the council as part of our June budget workshop. Excuse me, it says July, it should be June. In the general fund, there was a increased estimate for carry forward fund balance of approximately $350,000, supported by planned savings in the fiscal year 24 City Council Strategic Planning Contingency. With that $350,000, staff directed an increased transfer to the capital fund of $150,000, increased maintenance and operations funding for community engagement of $100,000, and then increased funding in intergovernmental of $100,000, as well as in the capital fund, an increased transfer from the general fund of $150,000, and increased pathway planning dollars of $300,000 with the intention that that would be made permanent as part of the fiscal year 26 proposed budget. So all the figures that we go through today will be inclusive of those recommendations. Looking at the citywide budget, not including the contingent appropriation of 570 million, the fiscal year 25 proposed budget is 877 million. Of that 877 million, 37% is within the general fund, approximately 328 million. That covers operating costs associated with general government services, things like police, fire, parks, and library. And the general fund is primarily supported by taxes. Capital funds make up approximately 4% of the fiscal year 25 proposed budget at $34.5 million. The capital funds cover infrastructure projects, major equipment, and major repairs associated with the general government functions. And the capital funds are primarily supported by taxes as well as development impact fees. Our enterprise fund budget of $463.4 million accounts for operating and capital costs for the airport, geothermal, solid waste, and water renewal funds, and are primarily supported by service users. And then other funds totaling $51.6 million or 6% of the overall budget carry various needs, including risk, debt service, health, housing, and fleets. Moving on to general fund revenues and expenses. The overall budget of $327.6 million is primarily supported by property taxes, representing 58% of overall general fund revenues. You can see on this pie chart, the next largest category being departmental revenue at 12%. I have one slide on that in a little bit later. Sales tax at 8% and development fees at 6%. As we look at general fund revenues, we typically break them apart into three categories. We look at those that are available for general purposes. That would include property tax, sales tax, liquor tax, franchise fees, and internal charges. That's about 74% of our overall revenues. About 18% of our revenues are service reimbursements. There's a direct expenditure link associated with these revenues. And that includes our departmental revenue and development fees. And then we have a smaller subset that's generally not accounted or not counted upon for ongoing budget balancing. That would include carry forward and fund balance, fines and forfeitures, and our other revenue. The fiscal year 25 budget is approximately 8.7% higher than fiscal year 24. But I feel it important to note that a very significant portion of the increase is attributable to one-time sources. Removing the one-time revenues from both fiscal year 24 and 25, year-over-year revenue growth is 5.5%. And then if you remove the departmental revenue and non-micron development fee growth, the year-over-year growth is a more modest 3.9%. And we would include or exclude those from the analysis because there is an expenditure offset. If you look at the left-hand portion of this slide, you can see the $18.8 million in one-time revenues that are included as part of this budget and highlights of what comprises that. $6.4 million coming from planned fiscal year 24 unallocated savings. ARPA revenue of $5.7 million, development fees associated with the Micron project, the utilization of our downtown maintenance reserve, cable TV franchise fees, and other at $350,000. When we look at one-time revenues, it's important that we allocate those to one-time expenses so as to ensure that we don't create a long-term structural deficit. That's a very important budgetary principle. As we look at the one-time expenses included as part of the fiscal year 25 proposed budget, you can see the housing transfer at $10 million, a transfer to help shore up our risk funds at $2.3 million, $1.9 million in additional funding for our capital fund, new path support services at $1.5 million, a property tax rebate at just under $1 million, and then other various expenses totaling $3.1 million. The mix of one-time revenues and one-time expenses included in the fiscal year 25 proposed budget is a healthy one, where we have more one-time expenses than we do one-time revenues. Moving on to property taxes, I have a handful of slides on this topic. There are three primary ways that year-over-year property tax receipts can increase. The first is a base increase on existing payers of up to 3% in total. We look at that generally to support cost increases associated with existing services. Second would be new construction and annexation, so property taxes associated with growth, as well as retiring urban renewal districts when applicable. We generally look to that category to support new costs associated with growth. Finally, recapturing foregone property taxes from prior years. When less than the maximum property tax is taken in any given fiscal year, the city council can reserve the right to take that in a future year with certain limitations. And that is one of the budget balancing strategies included as part of the fiscal year 25 proposed budget. Doing a look back to historical property tax increases, You can see this table represents what was allowable from fiscal year 2015 to fiscal year 24, and that's 3% each year. You can see the percent that was taken on the second line. And between fiscal years 2015 and 2020, the maximum was taken each year. However, fiscal years 21, a 0% increase was taken, 2.45% in fiscal year 23 and 2% in fiscal year 24. Collectively, those actions resulted in cumulative taxpayer savings of approximately $7.5 million. Looking back more immediately to fiscal year 24, it was one of the more favorable years for residential property taxpayers in many years. Many homeowners saw reductions of up to 15 and 20%, resetting their property tax assessments several years. That reduction was attributable to three primary factors. First, county assessments generally increased for commercial properties and decreased for residential properties, which reversed a portion of the burden shift that we'd seen in prior years. Secondly, there was statewide property tax relief made available through House Bill 292 at the state legislature. And then third, 2% base increase for Boise, and really cumulatively several years of not taking the maximum property tax growth of 3%. So for fiscal year 25, the recommendation is to leverage some of that relief provided in recent years for the continuity and expansion of vital community services. The property tax budget assumes a 5.2% overall base increase. That 5.2% is comprised of a 3% base growth as allowed per state law. Again, for cost increases for existing services, 1.2% for new construction. Otherwise, you can think of that as new payers for services associated with growth, and then 1% growth from foregone for certain service expansions. With these recommendations, the 5-year average base increase is 2.3%, approximately 23% lower than the allowable increase, and would still result in cumulative property tax savings of $5.7 million. Also included in the fiscal year 25 proposed budget is the continuation and expansion of the property tax rebate program at $0.9 million. There's a lot of information on this slide, so I'll just do a kind of an overview of it. On the bar chart, the blue bars represent the average home price within the city of Boise from fiscal year 2016 to fiscal year 25. The orange line represents on the average home the city taxes associated with that home, and the yellow dotted line represents the 10-year average. For fiscal year 25, assuming the same level of state relief made available through House Bill 292 as fiscal year 24, the projected taxes on that average home are 5.4% higher than they were in fiscal year 24. They are also 26.5% below the fiscal year 23 peak, 11% lower than fiscal year 2020 levels, despite assessed value growth of nearly 55%, and 2.7% below the 10-year average of $1,178. In terms of the property tax rebate that is included as part of the fiscal year 25 proposed budget, just a few statistics to offer. We began offering that program in fiscal year 23. It was the first year that that program was made available per state code. In fiscal year 23, residents that were participants on the Idaho Property Tax Reduction Program were eligible to apply for a rebate. We had a participation rate of 88%. We expended just under $1 million, with the average payment being approximately $655. In the most recent round, the program was also available to property tax reduction program participants. We had slightly fewer applications and participants, but a higher participation rate. The reason for that being the relief provided under House Bill 292 allowed for certain folks that had their had a property tax bill or assessment in fiscal year 23 to no longer have one. So less people were eligible. There were total anticipated payments of just under $500,000 with an average payment of $355. As we look to fiscal year 25, the proposed budget includes a recommendation to expand eligibility in the property tax rebate program to now include licensed in-home childcare providers. We don't know how many applicants or participants will have or the participation rate, but we have built in $925,000 to the fiscal year 25 budget, which would allow for 100% participation if everybody did apply. As we look at the property tax year-over-year growth, fiscal year 25 property tax budget is 9.4 million higher than it was in fiscal year 23. That growth comes from three categories: new construction, base growth, and foregone. I'm going to do a little overview of each one. New construction, which is generally used to support growth-related expenses, is increasing by $2.1 million. Some of the growth-related expenses included in this budget are Fire Station 13 and VRT. That list is not intended to be comprehensive. It's illustrative, and it demonstrates the fact that growth is not covering all of the growth-related costs. We did an analysis to look at how much that funding source would have been if not for House Bill 389, which limited growth to 90% versus the prior 100%. And it was about a $300,000 impact in fiscal year 24, about $1.3 million since House Bill 389 was approved. The base growth of 3% is expected to bring in $5.4 million. Some of the existing services that would be supported by that 5.4 million include compensation adjustments, the PERSI rate increases, software maintenance costs, VRT contributions, janitorial costs, increased contributions to our risk fund and to the Idaho Humane Society, as well as various police contracts and leases. As with the new construction, that list is not intended to be comprehensive, but illustrative. And then the recommendation to recapture prior year property taxes through the foregone mechanism is anticipated to yield approximately $1.8 million. That would support service expansions, including an increased transfer to capital to help close that gap that I mentioned earlier. Library expansions of just under $500,000, and then investments in VRT and childcare licensing at $200,000. As we look at departmental revenue, it's anticipated to bring in just under $41 million in fiscal year 25. That represents a 3.9 million or 10.6% year-over-year increase. That is not a normal year-over-year increase, but it does represent a couple of things. One being increased public safety contracts to reflect the full cost of service. It also includes certain parks and recreation items to reflect higher activity levels, as well as fee increases to keep up with costs. There is a fee schedule included in the budget document, and we're actually going to have a separate public hearing on that, so we can talk about that through that public hearing. Our departmental revenues, as I mentioned earlier, are primarily reimbursement based. The increases cover higher costs and activity levels, and any revenues that are generated are not available for general use, nor are they profit driven. And it's always important to remember when we're talking about this category that within Parks and Recreation, we have a scholarship program that is available for youth, seniors, and community members with disabilities to ensure that they can participate in our programming regardless of their ability to pay. As we look at sales tax, the fiscal year 25 proposed budget is $26.4 million. That represents a 1% annual growth from the fiscal year 24 estimate, and also reflects the impact from recent legislation using online sales tax receipts to provide property tax relief. Development fees are budgeted at $19.8 million. That represents a 23.3% growth rate compared to fiscal year 24. However, it's important to note that that increase is primarily attributable to one-time revenues associated with the Micron development. On this slide, you can see historical figures represented in blue, projected figures represented in orange, with the yellow representing anticipated Micron receipts. As we look at general fund expenses, the proposed budget is $327.2 million. The majority of the general fund proposed budget is for personnel at just under 70%. Our maintenance and operation expenses or non-personnel expenses at approximately 19%. Transfers to the capital fund and other funds at 9%. And our contribution to Valley Regional Transit at 3% of our overall budget, and just approximately 5% of our property tax budget. As we look at that prior 68%, the breakdown of personnel across expenditure categories, you can see salaries make up 59% of the $223.8 million within that category. Retirement costs at 15% and health at 17%. It's important to note that if we were to look back last year, retirement would make up about 14%. So that's an increasing share of the overall personnel budget this year, primarily attributable to that rate increase that I discussed at the outset. As we look at the general fund budget by department, you can see that just under 52% of the overall budget is dedicated towards public safety. That would include police, fire, Office of Police Accountability, and our legal criminal prosecution costs. Our second largest category at Parks and Recreation at 14.1%, and our support departments at 11.7%. You can see some of our other categories in there, including planning and development services at 6.5%, library at 5%, so on and so forth. Just a little overview as to the framework by which recommendations were made and included within the fiscal year 25 proposed budget. There was a priority waterfall approach, whereby the first priority was for cost increases for non-discretionary items and additions supported from revenues or offsetting expenditure reductions. Things included in that category would be the aforementioned Fire Station 13 and PERSI costs, necessary cost increases for things like utilities, insurance, fuel, software, and janitorial, and then some additions supported from revenues or offsetting expenditure reductions include investments for our golf program, Idaho Ice World, and Development Services Department. The second category we looked at was benefit and compensation adjustments for existing staff. And that would include the 3% increase for general employees and one-time merit pay. Third priority would be citywide initiatives. And within that category, we can think about things like our property tax relief program, a grant match for Jesse Tree, our contribution towards housing investments, and the childcare subsidy. Next, we looked at discretionary one-time items, and there were numerous items that are included within this category as demonstrated by a previous slide. But things that would be included in here might include our technical rescue and dive team consolidation within the fire department, investments in library materials, public records request enhancement as discussed earlier today at work session, one-time transfers to capital fund and our risk fund, and then a modern zoning code user guide. And then the fifth category would be base FTE and M&O increases. And some of those items would include Office of Police Accountability staffing, investments in Cole and Eustick branch library, a citywide leadership reorg and departmental realignment as outlined within the proposed budget, grants software, and an investment in our fire recruitment program. One of the more significant investments included as part of the fiscal year 25 proposed budget is a $10 million one-time transfer to our housing funds. This slide outlines the funding sources that were utilized to make up that transfer. First, a $2.4 million utilization of the downtown maintenance reserve. That reserve has been sitting on our balance sheet since 2019, was originally created following the retirement of the Central District Urban Renewal District and has never been utilized. All ongoing expenses associated with the maintenance needs that came on when that district retired have been budgeted and built into various departments, primarily our Parks and Recreation Department. Second would be ARPA or American Rescue Plan Act funds of $3.9 million. Those funds were previously allocated towards climate innovation projects. They are recommended to be shifted to housing as the funding can be spent more quickly in that category. And I'll note that that does not represent a reduced commitment to climate innovation. We would expect to see additional recommendations and requests for the council in future budget cycles for that category. Thirdly, a $3.7 million use of projected fiscal year 24 carryover funds. That is also one-time in nature and is attributable to projected excess revenue and expenditure savings. I might pause briefly if there's any questions on the general fund before moving to the capital fund.
Madam Mayor, quick question. Eric, thank you so much. Will you go back one slide? On the downtown maintenance reserve, that was part of a CID? Yeah, refresh my memory on where that money comes from and what it was going to be used for.
Absolutely. Madam Mayor, members of the council, there was a urban renewal district, the Central District Urban Renewal District that retired in 2019. It was the first district that retired in quite some time for the city and is part of the downtown core. So there was a very cautious approach at that point in time to put funding aside in case there were urgent maintenance needs. At the time of retirement, there was a lot of work done by CCDC to ensure that we were getting, newish assets, and we didn't take on a huge maintenance need or a deferred maintenance need. And then we've built into the Parks and Recreation Department the ongoing maintenance associated with that district. So we've never called upon that reserve.
Madam Mayor, thank you so much for all this information, Eric. You're so good at outlining it in a really digestible way. So I appreciate you. I had some questions. To me, this is clear. I had some questions that came in from constituents that were concerned that we were increasing we were considering the increase in property taxes to pay for affordable and accessible housing for others. This to me has outlined that we're not, but can you just confirm for me that those property tax increases are not going towards the permanent supportive housing that the city is working on? Those are one-time funds for one-time use, and the tax increases are going to pay for our typical city services on an ongoing operational schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. Madam Mayor, members of council, that's correct. All of the property tax increases, as we tried to outline on a prior slide, are for ongoing needs, whether they be growth related, whether they be cost increases or service expansions. To date, all of the investments that we've made in housing, this year as well as prior years have been with one-time funds, primarily from current year savings or from American Rescue Plan Act funds.
And sorry, one more question, Madam Mayor. So, and to clarify, the savings that we're seeing from that, the downtown fund or from previous expenditure savings, because those are available for like a one-time investment, but really wouldn't be as useful perhaps to support the ongoing operations.
Yes, absolutely, Madam Mayor, members of the council, to utilize the one-time proceeds as outlined on this slide for ongoing expenses would create a structural deficit that we'd have to address in future years. Just do a brief overview of the capital fund. The capital fund has three primary cost categories: capital projects at approximately 42% of the overall budget, major equipment at about 26% of the overall budget. Of that, approximately half is dedicated towards the fleet and vehicle replacements, and then about a third of the overall budget is dedicated towards major repairs and maintenance. In terms of revenue into the capital fund, just over 60% of overall revenue comes from annual transfers from the general fund. Franchise fees make up about 14% of overall revenue, as do development impact fees. And then the other categories include interest and other revenue. As we look at major equipment, the 25 proposed budget is $7.7 million. Of that, approximately $3.5 million is dedicated towards fleet. Public safety costs are a significant portion of this overall category at about $2.7 million in fiscal year 25. Over a 5-year period, we'd be looking at approximately $26.5 million of maintenance of major equipment. And I'll note that the 25 proposed budget includes approximately 18 police vehicles and a dive response apparatus for fire. This category is highly variable. One of the main cost drivers in this category is fire engines and fire trucks. And when we have years where we have to replace those, we see significant spikes. And you can see on this category, fiscal year 23 and 22 were two of those years. Overall, non-public safety major equipment budgets have increased approximately 19% annually over the past 5 years. And we're seeing an 18.8% compound annual growth rate within this category. Part of the reason that we have that 25% gap that I mentioned earlier. The fiscal year 25 proposed budget also includes just under $1.5 million for parks, about $1.3 million for information technology equipment, and then $800,000 for an electric vehicle grant match that allows us to leverage about $4 million in federal funds. As we look at the major repairs and maintenance category, about $9.5 million is proposed. Growth in this category is due to inflation, as well as an increasing number of assets and aging facilities. Some highlights included in fiscal year 25 include about $3.6 million for parks projects, $2 million for deferred maintenance at the downtown library branch, 1.2 million for routine building maintenance, 1.1 million for elevator replacements, and then $750,000 for a roof replacement at the Boise Art Museum. As with the major equipment category, the compound annual growth rate for this category well exceeds the growth in terms of our overall revenue at the city. And we're looking at a 15.8% compound annual growth rate. As we look at our discrete capital projects included as part of the fiscal year 25 proposed budget, they total $12.2 million. There's a number of Parks and Recreation Department projects that are included. That would include Alta Harris Park from impact fees, C.W. Moore Park supported by contribution from CCDC, Fairview Park supported by general fund or the general fund transfer, an investment in Lowell and South Pools as discussed earlier at work session, supported by the general fund, McDevitt Youth Complex, Molinar Park and Veterans Park, primarily supported by impact fees and donations. I'll note, as I think the mayor mentioned during the prior work session, that there is an allowance that was built in to the fiscal year 25 proposed budget for the pools, whether it be rehabilitation or replacement. And we can bring forward funding once a final recommendation is built and cost estimates are finalized. Just highlighting briefly some of those cost inflation pressures that we've seen within the capital fund. You can see the blue portion of this chart representing general fund support, all transfers and franchise fees cumulatively. The gray portion above it representing how much we would have needed to contribute to the capital fund in order to keep up with escalation. And you can see that the gap was closed somewhat, not all the way, but we're making progress towards that gap through the recommendation to increase the transfer as part of the 25 proposed budget, utilizing that foregone property taxes. With that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions or comments before we move into the public hearings.
All right. Questions of Eric? Nope. Okay, we're going to go ahead then. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. And open the public hearing. You'll see that we're hearing both the proposed budget and the foregone property tax as one hearing. And then Eric will be back with presentation on fees, and then we'll open it up again. I've got a couple folks that have signed up, so I'm going to go with folks that signed up first. And then if you're here to testify, I'd ask that you, if I haven't called you, raise your hand, but start to move up to the front row after these first folks that get called testify. And with that, I'm going to start with Gary. Is it default? Sorry, no, it's not. I know. The president of Centennial Neighborhood Association. Good to see you. I should have just looked up rather than trying to read the paper. Welcome.
Yes, welcome and good evening. Hot evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Gary Default. I am the president of the Centennial Neighborhood Association. I live at 13487 West Hazelnut Street in West Boise. I would like to turn my allotted neighborhood association time over to members of our association and have them use my allotted time.
Sure. For the budget hearing, it's every individual is an individual, correct? Right. So if you'd like to say something, you can as well. Everybody gets to testify in the same way.
So I'd like to turn this over to Mark Salisbury, one of our members.
Oh, I see. You're just doing an introduction.
Yes, I am.
Sorry. I thought that you were thinking you had 20 minutes so you could divide between
No,
everybody.
I'm just the handsome front guy. And then I just,
Gotcha. Well, welcome, Mr. President. It's good to see you, and
Thank
thank you for handing it over to Mark Salisbury. And then next up, I have Joe, is it Legue, and then Larry Ice.
Well, My name is Mark Salisbury. I'm a Boise resident residing at 13243 West Silverbrook Drive. And 1 year ago at this budget hearing, citizens from West Boise and members of the Centennial Neighborhood Association presented a petition signed by more than 800 Boise residents and made heartfelt pleas to city leadership for equal library access for everyone. We were hoping to see something more tangible sooner. However, we were glad to see that City Council approved the library budget, including funds for a facilities plan. And earlier this year to see that that was approved for Group 4 to move forward with that facilities plan. And so thank you, Mayor and council members and Director Dorr and library staff for that. City parks and libraries are perhaps the most visible services provided by the city, largely accessible throughout the city, providing no cost or generally no cost physical activity, entertainment, and education to all ages. A physically fit and educated population starting at a young age bodes well for the future. Therefore, we eagerly await opportunities for public engagement with this library facilities plan and completion of this plan. I had a couple of points that I wanted to raise about the budget, but is it okay if I come back up here after the neighborhood association? Okay.
You just got to say it all now in
Okay.
your time.
I can do that. I read through the budget one Sunday afternoon in June, and something that I liked that has been called out here was the property tax rebate for child care providers. And I think that was said it was provided through state law. Was that specifically for childcare, or Boise decided that's how we wanted to use that?
So that I keep us kosher in terms of how we do the hearing, I'll refer to that in some comments afterwards, but we typically don't answer questions directly from the public, but I'll bring that up.
Okay, thank you.
And go like this if I don't.
Excellent. And then as I read through the budget, I was a little confused by the changes. There's a lot of shifting around of resources, so it made it hard to see what was being added and removed. But something I did notice was for, I want to say, director level positions for, let's see, I have this written down. Ongoing city leadership team around 4 functional areas: infrastructure and public safety, community programs, policy and external affairs, and shared services. It wasn't really clear to me, are these new director level positions that other directors in the city report to? Are we creating an additional layer of bureaucracy here? Or are these positions going to bring material improvement to the lives of Boise citizens? And I guess hopefully City Council have communicated with city staff to try to assess if these are going to bring those desired benefits and worth the cost, making it worthwhile. So those are the couple of thoughts that I had about the budget. And thank you for your time. And I'd like to introduce Joe Legue from the Centennial Neighborhood Association.
Thanks, Mark. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, council members, my name is Joe Legue. I live at 14435 West Guinness Drive in far west Boise. And I have served as a founding member of the Centennial Neighborhood Association. Thank you for the opportunities you have offered for us to come before you now and in the past. Representing the association, always with vetted consensus. It was our pleasure to appear before the Parks and Recreation Commission in April. The commission then approved the master plan for completion of the Charles McDevitt Sports Complex. Approximately 10 acres of that park have remained a vacant, unused lot for nearly a quarter of a century. We're grateful to the city for the allocation of the $1.216 million for the park in the proposed fiscal year 25 budget. We ask, should anything arise that might result in a reallocation of those funds and a delay in construction and completion of McDevitt, we ask that you please inform us, the Centennial Neighborhood Association, in advance of any such proposed action. We're thankful to the city and are truly excited, truly, I mean this, from all of our neighbors out there, for the completion in 2025 and a ribbon cutting ceremony, hopefully. It is an honor to work on behalf of the far west side of Boise. And to collaborate with you, the city officials, one team for the greatest good of all, we thank you. This concludes the remarks from the Centennial Neighborhood Association.
Thank you. So is Larry Ice all on his own?
Madam Mayor, I would just say that I've never, since I've been at the city, seen us turn down a ribbon cutting ceremony, especially for a park. And I know that we always invite the neighborhood associations there when we do. So I'm sure that we'll make sure that you're there, but I'll make special note and make sure that we invite you to that one. It's a big one.
Okay,
Welcome.
thank you. Madam Mayor, council members, I'm Larry Ice, 14048 West Talon Creek Drive, out in West Boise on the Meridian Frontier. And
Still
I-
Boise.
it's still Boise. I'm speaking on my own tonight. I am the vice president of Centennial Neighborhood Association, but these are my personal comments. First of all, I'd like to thank the mayor and the city council for completing McDevitt Park. We're looking forward to seeing it started later this year and excited to have these new recreational opportunities available for the community next spring. That is really appreciated. It's been a long time coming. Boise's an amazing city. We have a strong mayor system, and we're fortunate to have very capable and competent mayor and city council. And I found that when Mayor McLean and the city council sets goals and they state those goals publicly, things get done. They get done in a hurry. And I think most of us in the city know many of the city goals. Becoming carbon neutral by 2030, total community by 2050, 100% clean electricity by 2035, 1,250 affordable housing units by 2026. Park proximity, 10-minute walk, path proximity, a 10-minute walk. But there's so many other things that aren't public, that they're in the budget, and I realize that. To look in a budget and see, you know, where do we support different things? What are our priorities? What are we doing? Most of the people of Boise don't look at the budget at all. And so I'm looking at some of this and saying, okay, I had to do a lot of digging. I could find it. I was at a town meeting with Colin Nash and Lucy Willits a few weeks ago, and we were asking about public safety. Colin Nash had the goals. He knew what public safety staffing was going to look like. But does anybody else in Boise, as a citizen, know what it's going to look like? Do we know what those goals are? We've got 300 officers. It comes to about 1.3 officers per 1,000 people. Is that good, bad, and different? It's a little below average for a lot of cities around here, comparable cities. 1.5 is about average. But where do we see those goals? Where are the stated goals that the city can get behind us? So what I'd like to simply say is simple, clearly stated, public goals drive success. The city administration has voiced support for public safety in our libraries, but there's no specific public goals. We talk about generalities like library access. How are we going to achieve that? Library goals is community organization and access to the community organizations. How are we going to do that? So just tonight, in the interest of transparency and efficiency, I'm simply suggesting that the administration set some public goals for all Boise priorities and departments. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Yes.
Oh, thanks. Hey, thank you, Larry. I'm really looking forward to teasing my Meridian City Council cousin in Meridian that he represents the Frontier District of Meridian. So you have given me great fodder. Thank you.
All right. Ladies? Nope. Nope. Anybody else here to testify? I'll just address a couple things and then there's probably questions for Eric and others. The childcare tax rebate is not required by the state. It is, as Eric had a slide, that showed for the first 2 years, the state passed a law a couple years ago that said cities could provide tax rebates if you came up with specific programs. We're the only city in the state to do this right now. I'm both proud of it, but also encouraging others to take advantage of it. And our team has worked with the state to try to streamline this process so that it would be easier for other cities to do it with less resources that the city of Boise has. We started out providing this to folks that were on the circuit breaker if they applied, and we had Jimmy Halliburton, other council members and staff knocking on doors to get that rate up to 93% the second year and 88% the first year. And then this year, I had announced at the beginning that I really wanted to grow it. And this year, I'm proposing that we grow it by providing a similar rebate opportunity to anybody that has a licensed in-home childcare. Childcare has been important to both council member Willits and Jordan Morales in particular, but of course, this is something that everybody cares about. But from suggestions from them, we came up with that program. And I just gotta say, because Chuck McDevitt was brought up a couple times, Charles McDevitt Sports Complex. Doug's not here anymore, but Chuck McDevitt was a really special person to me for many, many years. And I know he'd be very happy to see that we now have the impact fees to finish this. Doug's worked hard on making it happen, appreciated neighborhood engagement in that, and look forward to celebrating the neighborhood and remembering Chuck when this is all ready. No. Questions for Eric? All right. I want to make sure that nobody else is here one last time. With that, I'm going to close the public hearing. Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. Were you? Nope. Nope. Okay. Okay. Sorry. That's sorry. All right. With that, I'll close the public hearing.
Madam Mayor, I move that the ordinance be placed on the first reading calendar for the regular evening meeting on August 13th, 2024.
Second.
We have a motion and a second discussion.
I'll save it for the next one so we can do it
Great.
all one.
And then, yeah, because once we take a vote on this, we'll do a separate motion on foregone. All right. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Actually, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead. Sure.
I think I'll give my comments right now and we can replicate them for the next one. So first of all, thank you to Centennial Neighborhood Association for coming out on Tuesday and talking about all of the good things in the budget and all of your ideas. And I'm always constantly amazed at folks in Boise that take their time to help our city. I mean, it really is remarkable and it truly is inspiring. So thank you. I know that there's lots of things you could do on a Tuesday. There's $5 movies. It's really hot outside. There's lots and lots of things to do. So to echo the mayor's comments, this is a really special day because West Boiseans have been waiting almost a quarter of a century to finish that park. And we've got a plan in place and did a really tremendous amount of work to do public outreach on it. And I'm very, very excited to see it come to fruition. And I'm excited, we love libraries in West Boise. We want more of them. Really excited in this budget that we're adding to the digital collection. Director Dorr has really explained counterintuitively that how expensive it is actually to add to digital. It is not free. It is expensive. And so appreciate that as part of the budget. I'm excited that we're investing in the fire station that we desperately need. And to echo the mayor, I really care deeply about childcare and have obviously a personal story with that. And what we need to do more there, because I believe it is an economic benefit in addition to what it does for parents and families. So there's lots and lots of good things in this budget that I care about, and we just don't. You see the process here. We're gonna vote on this budget to send it to reading, and then we're gonna do a budget hearing on the foregone. But I don't get to vote on the budget individually. Mark, I'm very impressed that you read all this on a Sunday afternoon. It is a lot. And I know that all of the council members take it really seriously. We don't get a chance to vote on these things individually. And there's just lots and lots of good things in this budget. There's lots of investments. I wish the system was different. I wish I could go through and say public safety was one and transportation was another, but that's not the system that we live with. So I would like to explain my vote. To balance the budget, the city needs more money than the legislature allows. Now, we can quibble about, where that's going, but at the end of the day, we got a bucket of money We got a budget and we got to fill it. And so the city's taking foregone, I call it backsies, like we did in fourth grade, taking back taxes to do it, and at a rate of at 1%. And every 1% that we put into that bank account or that bucket is $1.8 million. And that's a lot of money. I mean, we just heard that McDevitt was 1.2. And we all know that because we want to be fiscally responsible, that taxpayer dollars are precious. So of that 1.8 million, 800,000 is for new staff for the reorg. And I've worked in government a long time. I know that you can reorganize without hiring more people, but that's not the case here. This budget hires more deputies in the mayor's office. It's more middle management at a cost of $800,000 a year, and that totals 2.4 million in the next 3 years. And as Eric alluded with Percy, and increases, that'll just get bigger and bigger and bigger because of inflation. I believe there's so many other places that we could put this money. We could hire more police officers, which this budget doesn't do. We could hire more mental health teams to help our first responders in crisis. We could put more money in the capital fund for the pools. In fact, according to President Nash's back of the napkin math, that $800,000 in the next few years would probably do it. And I know I'll likely be the only one on this stand or this dais that will vote no on the budget. That's the dynamic, and I accept that. But I also dare to have a different voice, and I believe that's what my constituents want. They want to have folks who have a different opinion and can say it calmly and sincerely and with class. I believe that transparency is accountability, and the taxpayers of Boise need to know that the city is raising taxes and why it's raising taxes, and that I will not vote for a budget that raises taxes for middle management. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I'd love to make a comment now too. I just want to thank you for bringing forward the property tax rebate for in-home childcare. This, I think, is a really great option for increasing childcare capacity in our city. It's very, very tough for childcare facilities to hire the staff. And then obviously you have all the costs of running a business. We have so many really talented parents in this city that have the time and resources to be able to run good programs out of their homes, programs that my kids have benefited from in my neighborhood, really important parts of our social community fabric. So I'm excited to see how this rebate maybe encourages more. I think we have about 80 that qualify right now, and curious how that'll help. So thank you for thinking of other ways that we can do to things that we can do to try to increase that capacity. You know, I'm also very aware of the impacts that raising taxes costs. I have dear family members that are on fixed incomes, and when I look at the city resources, I look at what this impact will be on the average priced home, about $58. That extra 1% is about $15. I think it's really important that we continue to do the things that we need to do to make sure our city is ready for the next year, for the next 1,000 people that move here. And public safety is very, very important. I think as we see how things work out with our CLA negotiations right now, that budget picture will be clear. But I'm really grateful for this budget. I believe that it does set us up for success in the years to come. Thanks.
All right. People talking now or later? I don't want to cut people off. Okay, go ahead.
Hey, Madam Mayor, I just want to reiterate my comments that from our previous meeting or work session when we put this on the hearing calendar. There is something for everybody in this budget. Pools, pathways, parks, housing, childcare. The biggest budget driver on new revenue that we're taking is for public safety. It's for the new fire station. And that's a promise that we made when we brought Northwest Boise into the picture, and we're delivering on that. We had questions in the budget work session about where our new officers coming from, and we currently have enough money in our existing budget at BPD to be able to cover that. For those reasons, I'm supporting this budget. I would additionally add that if these are the types of proposals that we're going to get, that if we need staff to continue to bring us innovative solutions like we saw today during our work session on housing, great proposals like we saw on the pools, then I will defer to the administration's judgment on the best way to continue to bring those innovative proposals to us. So thank you for this budget and thank you for working with us on it. Look back at the council's strategic priorities that we presented on at the beginning of the year, including important projects like McDevitt Park, increased funding for pathways, making the pools a priority, and continuing to keep the ball rolling on permanent supportive housing. All those things are checked off in here. So thank you, Madam Mayor, for bringing this proposed budget, and I'm proud to support it.
Madam Mayor, it looks like now is the time to make comments.
And I'll just say, we'll ask that the record note that comments were made now, when we move into the second motion. So
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Couple things first, just to maybe address some of the folks in the room. Last year, when you came to this meeting, a lot of you came to this meeting, I think I made a note that this was the most amount of people that had ever attended one of our budget hearings. And you spoke loud, you spoke clear, you spoke about McDevitt Park, and you got McDevitt Park. That might be a lesson to other folks that like this is a good meeting to attend and it's good to be involved in the process. So I want to thank you for being involved in the process. I want to thank you for coming back again. And I just want to let you know that like your advocacy for your neighborhood and your part of town is working. You've got folks up here that are listening, whether they're the council members in your district or the council members in other districts as well. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your voice. And I hope you can feel like it was heard. Second thing, just want to thank all the staff who put a lot of work into all of this. I've thanked many departments already tonight, but I'll thank you again. It's a big book. It's hard to read in one afternoon. It took me longer than that. And it takes way more than an afternoon to put it together. So thank you for all the work in putting it together, reaching out to the community, listening to us in the process, for doing that. I want to thank our council members as well. I think Council President Nash did a great job this year in making sure that the strategic priorities of councils were clear. That we incorporated those in the budget. So I think we've got a really good looking representation of what the council needs are as well. I say this every single year, but a budget should be a reflection of an organization's values. And I look at this budget and I see all those things. I see things that value parks, pathways, pools. I don't know if there was another P that Council President Nash had in there. So permanent supportive housing, anything else that starts with a P. Huge investments into affordable housing and ending homelessness. Really game-changing investments. Investments in public safety with our new fire station. I think it's a reflection of the increase in costs and services that we're providing to the community and a commitment to maintaining that level of service. Nobody wants to see their streets become dirtier. Nobody wants to see their parks turning brown. Nobody wants to see their services go away. And it costs a larger amount of money to provide those services. And we need to make sure that we're creating a sustainable budget to do that. I see a commitment in our council members and our staff walking door to door and knocking on doors and making sure that every single person who's eligible for a city-ran property tax rebate program takes advantage of those programs. And I see our council members, Willits and Morales, in the mayor's office that worked really hard to make sure that childcare was implemented in there as well. I do see changes in the way that we're managing or running an organization, and I see that as growing and evolving. And making sure that we are maintaining those services. Some of those services and some of that reorg was actually helped with Linda, who's retiring soon, but helping us reorganize some of the way that our departments function in a more streamlined way. So congratulations on going out the door, making a long-term change at the city to help us run more efficiently. I'm not involved in the day-to-day operations, and I try to make sure that I'm careful about not getting too involved in telling people exactly how those works, but I have really high expectations for our city and our staff. And so when they say that they've got a plan to operate better, I'm excited to see how that plan unfolds. I want to make sure that I'm supportive of that plan, but I also want to make sure that I'm watching and making sure that it's working and it's working really well. And I have trust in our staff and trust in our mayor's office to do that as well. I do think it means that we as staff members, employees at the city of Boise, need to be bought in and committed to that plan, and that we're making sure that we're doing everything that we can to make sure that it's effective for our community members, which is our bottom line goal, making sure that we're supporting the community well. And the very last thing that I would say is that one of the things I appreciate about this budget is it reflects an existing lens in climate action. Every single thing that we do has to be moving forward in making sure that we're developing a resilient and sustainable city and we're addressing climate action. And I appreciate that lens in every single part of this budget, whether it's fire engines or the way that we pick up trash or other vehicles that we're doing here at the city, even the way that we're building buildings. And I'm excited that there's funding in here that's going to allow us to explore a more youth-focused lens going forward. And so I see so many great things in this budget that reflect the values that I think that our city stands for, that our community wants. I do agree with Councilmember Willits that there's great opportunities for us to be increasing our ability and our intention in addressing mental health and partnering with police to do that really well, whether that's expanding our behavioral health response teams or exploring other ways that we respond to people experiencing a mental health crisis. And I'm so thankful that you brought that up and that you're pushing that forward. I'm hopeful that we can find ways to do that within this budget, as well as ways where we can explore ongoing needs in that area. So again, I thank you for bringing that up.
Jimmy, I think you used more than 3 minutes. We're going to use a timer on you next time. This is exciting for me. Last year I came and commented on the budget from this end. And so this is my first time being able to talk about the budget on this side. And, I want to start off with a quote. I'm not as eloquent of a speaker as some of my fellow colleagues. And it says that, a budget is not just a collection of numbers on a page. It is a reflection of communities, of an organization's values and what they value and what their community values. And that's from President Obama. And I think this budget does reflect highly of what our community does value. It values housing. It values investments for daycare because we sorely need that here in this town. More housing, more daycare. And it's a comprehensive approach to enhancing the community's well-being, as well as our infrastructure needs. And the budget allocates resources to crucial initiatives, especially for our fire station, our housing, and also in our well-being and our happiness by going to parks and libraries and making sure that life continues to remain good and good for us and everyone within the community to have things to go do, to have 10-minute walks to a park. This budget reflects a thoughtful and inclusive approach to meeting the needs of Boise residents and promoting growth and sustainability, and to meeting the goals that we have wrapped around sustainability and community well-being. I'm confident that the investments that we are making will make a positive impact for all of our residents and for the outcomes and for the quality of our lives. So I am in full support of the budget and appreciate having this opportunity.
Madam Mayor, sounds like now's the time. Boise is a great city, isn't it? We have fabulous parks. It's safer than it's been in decades. We're planning for our future through housing and climate action investments and continuing to further access for all of our residents. In the budget feedback that we received, and I read all of it, we heard that folks are committed to climate action, public safety, transit, parks, libraries, and housing. This budget reflects those priorities. Unfortunately, we have seen costs increase across the board for things like labor and resources, some increases up to 60%, as Eric outlined for us. I'm sensitive to the increased burdens coming from all directions on our residents, so I don't take the 58 average tax increase lightly. We do the best we can based on the residents' feedback and what we have. I've been in business a long time, but government funding is not like business. We can't just offset increased costs with as much revenue as we need. It's limited here. So to those who are here in person and to those watching online, I thank you for being involved in the process and for sharing your feedback and opinions. I always say that it takes so many of us focusing on our niche in the community, which part that we're passionate about, and keep an eye on it, and staying active in that area so that we can all move our city in the right direction. So thank you for being here, and for all of those reasons and the feedback that is supported by it, I support this budget.
All right, that's everybody. All right, clerk, will you call the roll?
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willetts,
No.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
5 in favor, 1 opposed, motion carries.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of RES 346 24.
Second.
We have a motion, and a second. Clerk?
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willetts,
No.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
5 in favor, 1 opposed, motion carries.
Right. Thank you. Eric, before you jump in, I just want to say a couple things. Thanks to the council for the discussion, the work that brought us to this point, and of course staff as well for getting us here. As I said at the beginning, I'm really excited about what this budget does. Appreciate the suggestion too that it reflects the community's values. That's always how I've looked at these budgets. Larry, I want to say something because I love that you called out the way we set goals and then work like hell to meet them. And we do have goals in policing, but we need to be clear about it. So I'm going to take that to heart. And in the last meeting that we had, the chief was here to talk about, we set a goal that by next year our vacancies would be filled. And there are 34 vacancies, 25 of them are being filled currently with new classes, so that leaves 9, and he's got a plan for that next. And then we look at how we grow. We've also had discussions of whether it's 1.3 per thousand, is it 1.5? Councilmember Morales rightly pointed out that there's an outlier in our cities, a city that's not so safe, so has lots and lots of officers, that brings that average higher than 1.5, but I think it's about 1.4 if you take that outlier out. And so working with the police department to set those goals, but I'm going to take the suggestion to heart that we be loud and proud about that and do the same work that we've done to make sure that we beat or exceed those goals in the future. We are investing in what the community has asked us to do, and that it's been said a lot, that as we seek to make sure that we're a safe and welcoming city for everyone, that means we look at the basics of what a city does, we look at the basics of what a resident and their family needs, and then what we've got and how we do it. A part of that is by being quick and nimble and creative and innovative that our team makes possible to do, and with council's help too. We've been able to invest in pools and parks, all the Ps, great new partnerships that actually make it possible for us to do more in areas of permanent supportive housing and other needs that our residents have while other agencies have walked away from it. We're providing tax relief, protecting open space, taking climate action, and investing in, as I said earlier, our residents and also our employees in ways that matter to them, whether it be looking at, okay, we don't have a lot of resources, but healthcare costs are going up. We're going to take care of our employees. They've asked that we look at covering some of those costs. They've asked us to look at how we improve internal processes and their day-to-day work so that they can make good on the promises that we've all made to the residents of Boise. People is program. People is service. The residents of our community expect a lot, as they should and must, and we all do. And we're doing everything we can to get it to you. And so much of that is, and all of it is made possible by employees at the city of Boise. So as we look ahead, I look forward to the readings of the budget, the work that we've done to get us to this point, but most importantly, to seeing the impact of this budget and the good work of our residents and our employees in implementing this budget and what that means for our neighborhoods and our city as we move forward. So thank you for your diligent engagement in that. And Eric, now you're going to be talking about fees.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, members of the council. The fiscal year 25 proposed budget outlines 1,465 total fees. Of those fees, approximately 54% are recommended to be increased, 795 to be exact. About a third of them are recommended to be unchanged. There's a recommended elimination of 8.6% of those fees, or 126. There are 52 new fees proposed as part of this budget and recommendations to decrease 6 fees. Most all fees, regardless of whether they are changing or not, are included in the budget book. There are certain fees that are not included in the fee schedule. Those include those that are required to be updated via ordinance, as well as those with complex valuation bases and are displayed in separate tables, primarily those being our development services fees. For fiscal year 25, we have removed fines from the budget document as they are not included in the fee and fine schedule, nor are they subject to the public hearing process. I will note, however, that fines are outlined and accessible to the public via Open Book, where we include all of our fees and fines. And Open Book, as a reminder, is our online budget transparency tool. For this evening, any fees that are new or increasing greater than 5% are subject to this public hearing. A reminder that per state code, fees are not to exceed the cost of the service being rendered. I touched on that briefly when we were going through the department revenues, how there's not a profit motive associated with our fees. And that the majority of our proposed adjustments are to keep up with cost increases. As we look at our general fund, I touched on this earlier, but we do have a scholarship program in place for our Parks and Recreation services for our youth programs, our senior programs, as well as any programs for community members with disabilities. Certain fees are recommended to be adjusted by higher percentages than the normal 3 to 5% range after years of not being updated, or to keep up with costs. And within planning and development services, no changes to fee structures are proposed due to a cost of services study, which is just begun. As we look at our other funds, within the Water Renewal Fund, there is a 15% overall increase that has been built in with a lower increase proposed for residential for the residential sector at 13.2%. And then within the Solid Waste Fund, residential fees are recommended to be increased by 7%, commercial recycling by 8%, and then commercial trash by 9%. With that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions before we open up the public hearing.
Madam Mayor. Eric, I think you mentioned this in the first presentation, but can you just affirm that these fee increases are not generating revenue for the city? This is covering our additional expenses. Is that accurate?
Yes, absolutely. Madam Mayor, members of the council.
But they do generate revenue, but they don't generate profit.
Thank you. Sorry, profit.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, council member, we do not look to our fees, whether they be development fees, departmental fees, or any of our fees to generate revenue that can be used in other areas. They are all have an expenditure offset. So the fee increases that are proposed this year and in any budget cycle are typically to capture fee or cost increases and to ensure that we don't lose ground in our reimbursement.
Madam Mayor, I just want to add, to me, the increased fees for things that we all use, like solid waste and, water renewal, things like that, it's as painful to me as property tax increases because I know it hits our residents in the same way. Do you have any information on how these are offset, if at all, these kinds of things? Is there anything that we do to try to, reduce that cost to our residents? I know that it's not something we take lightly in raising those fees, but can you speak to that at all?
Sure, and Steve's going to come up because particularly in the for water, it's tied to bond payments and other things within that fund. So Steve can go through that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Stead. Thank you for the question. Yes, there's many steps we take to try to reduce the costs. I'll give you one example. We had a project out at West Boise. It was a filtration project that was coming in way over budget. And that was based on some of the changes in design, but also some of the costs we were seeing on supplies and equipment. So we paused the project, and we're now talking to the regulators about innovative approaches to basically allow us more flexibility in what projects move forward when, based on our financial constraints. So we'll be one of the first cities, if we can pull it off, to use what's called an integrated planning approach that EPA approved probably 2 or 3 years ago, that we want to use in Boise to help us manage cash flow so that we can really work hard to reduce some of these rate impacts, because it's not lost on us. We know these are significant increases, but we do work hard to try to find ways to offset costs. We also got a grant recently from the Bureau of Reclamation. It's a $1 million planning grant for our recycled water program. But the best part of that is that it's a planning grant that opens us up to availability for future grant funds in the coming years once we get to construction. So we're constantly looking for things that'll help offset costs.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that.
Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
While Steve's up here, there were a couple of years where we were going through meeting after meeting talking about the water renewal bond and how that would impact some of these things. And we knew that there would be some increases coming. And we also saw a variety of different scenarios on how those increases would look, knowing that if we invested in them through this bond, it would look different than if we didn't. These, to me, as I'm looking at them, they look similar to what we had predicted they would be when we approved that water renewal bond a couple of years ago.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, that's correct. And I think it's important to note the bond election and the community's approval of that bond really is helping us a lot dealing with some of these increased costs. It almost serves as a shock absorber. Otherwise, we'd have to go immediately to a large rate increase, but we have this now reserve that we can rely on to cover some of this extreme variability we're seeing in costs. So credit to the community for approving it. It's giving us that ability now to serve as a shock absorber to some of these really big costs we're seeing.
Yep. At this point, we're not really seeing anything that's diverging too much from what we thought it would look like.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
While Steve is up there, Steve, we've had some questions about the fees that may impact breweries. Could you just clarify, are we on those in this hearing, or will that be the development impact fee hearing?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Nash, the fees that are in this hearing are related to the connection fees that we collect. What we're working with the breweries is not to have those fees impact them, that we're trying to work for a solution in this current situation that we're in prior to the fee increase.
Okay.
So we're hopeful that won't impact them. Now, it would impact them, say, 2 years from now, that they want to add capacity, then yes, we would have those higher fees. But the current issue that we're working with the breweries on is really trying to keep it at the current rates.
So is there any action we might take tonight that would impact your ability to continue those negotiations?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Nash, no. In fact, we reached out to the breweries, and we're going to try to meet early August to continue the discussions on resolving that.
Okay. Madam Mayor, we're getting a lot of interest in this, so I just propose that council, probably not something to take up tonight, but council have a work session to better understand some of those fees around it. We're just getting a lot of interest in that.
The fees as they relate to breweries
Yeah.
putting wastewater in the system?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
sure.
Yeah, no problem.
Great.
Thank you.
Anything further? All right. I think that, right, public hearing. Anybody here for this one? It's totally up to you.
Well, hello, this is nice. I usually am up the street a couple blocks. So, Madam Mayor, City Council members, my name is Sheila Francis. I'm a resident of Boise in District 3, and I am the Executive Director of Idaho Brewers United, the trade association representing Idaho's craft brewing industry. Sorry, Councilmember Morales, you're the only one that doesn't have a brewery in your district. We'll have to get one somehow, incentives, right? We just wanted to be here to put our concerns on the record, and we do appreciate the conversations that have been started with Public Works, and we look forward to continuing those because some of the current proposals that have been out there will be detrimental to the brewing industry and will result in closure of those businesses. And I think we've all seen breweries are great, vibrant contributors to the community, greatly support various charities. I'd say I cannot think of another industry that is as supportive of the community as the beer industry. So as I said, we look forward to continued discussions, but want to put it on the record. We have very, very serious concerns about some of the proposed changes.
Madam Mayor, question. So I was like, where's Steve? Different guy with glasses and a beard. I would like some clarity because we've gotten so many emails and correspondence, and thank you for that. If we approve the fees as described, is that going to hurt the breweries as they have described? So I'm concerned that we're going to approve this and say we're going to work it out, and then we don't work it out.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Wiltz, no, to the extent that we're working out a current issue with the breweries under the current system. If, a year from now, a new brewery comes in, they'll fall under the new fees. But currently, what we're working with the breweries on this approval does not preclude us to continue to work with them on the current situation.
Thank you. So I want clarification. Obviously, if you're a brewery right now, great. But if you want to go into Council Member Morales's district, are you going to be able to, or will these fees basically preclude you from doing business?
Well, it's hard for me to say at this point in time. However, some of the issue around it is there is a lack of transparency of what the fees actually are and an understanding of how the connection fees are assessed. And that has to do with barrel growth, and maybe that has to do with the communications at the time of connection. Because many breweries are under the impression, I don't know, right or wrong, that they're given an assessment, they provide all the plans, what they're going to produce-ish, and they get a bill and they pay the bill. And then so this now, I mean, it's hard for me to say, but if some of the fees are remotely close to what I'm seeing for some of our breweries, it could be a very big challenge. But also, breweries are scrappy and people can make informed business decisions as long as there is that increased transparency in front of the business.
Madam Mayor? For a new business, the new fee structure coming in, is it clear? Would they be able to make a sound business decision based off of what's
I am unsure actually at this point. There's some because there's two different issues at hand. There's the connection assessment fees as well as the rates of wastewater. And currently breweries aren't being uniformly, and this is something as part of our discussions, aren't uniformly being charged rates. Some are paying as low as $9, while a similar sized brewery is paying more than $26 for the exact same. So it's hard to say with this. It was hard to dissect the document because I'm just not as familiar on where what the classifications are. So he might have more information about that. That'll provide an answer to your question.
Madam Mayor,
I'm gonna-
I've got a question for Steve. I think I can
Yeah,
clear
I'd
this
like
up.
See, go ahead.
Yep. So, Steve, just kind of, if you can confirm that this is sort of where we've gone so far. So we had a meeting with the breweries last Friday. We learned a lot about some of the concerns that you had and got a lot of feedback. Public Works is now in the process of taking that feedback and trying to come up with some solutions that would work for you all. And I believe that they've are planning on scheduling a meeting with you in August. Correct so far? That's correct. To go over some of that feedback and to figure out some of these solutions forward. It sounds to me like Public Works is saying that those solutions being put forward for the existing breweries would exist underneath the terms, the fees, and the impacts that we have right now. And so that would be part of that discussion. And it sounds to me like if a new brewery opened up in March of next year, that legally we would have to make sure that we're charging that brewery the correct amount of fees for connections and operating expense, or the M&O, to make sure that we were covering their use. And we do that not at a higher rate or a lower rate. We do it based off of how much it costs to do that. And what we're approving right now is for a new brewery coming online in this next year's budget to make sure that their costs are covered with the amount that we have in these updated fees.
Madam Mayor, Council Member Halliburton, that is correct.
Great.
And then regarding the comment on the $9 versus the $27, they can vary. There are breweries, there's tap rooms with a restaurant, there's a restaurant with a brewery. So there are a lot of different combinations of the restaurant. They will vary. As staff, we're going to go back and verify all of those. We're going back through all of our data to make sure that they are consistent and equitable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually have a question.
We're going to move, I'll see what the question is, but we're going to have a work session on this because Public Works has a lot more to say about this. That this is a different topic and you've opened the door and now they have quite a bit that they'll need to say on the record as well. And we'll do that in a separate work session.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
can we just have Eric confirm what dates we think that the budget will be and these fee proposals will be on our reading calendars? Because I just want to remind council that, well, maybe not common, just because we approve the budget today, it still has to be on reading calendars 3 times.
Madam Mayor, council members, that is true for the budget itself. The fees that we're recommending to be increased or are new are approved via resolution.
Okay.
So they would be approved tonight with an effective date of October 1st and would not go on the reading calendar.
All right, thank you, Eric.
And Steve, I'd like you to provide a clarifying question or an answer related to what you are required to do by law when it comes to all customers that are either tapping in or expanding how much they're putting into the water system.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, by state law, we're required to have, the phrase typically is growth pays for growth. So where either a new business comes in, a new business expands, and within the wastewater fund, we're required by state statute, the cases have gone up to the Supreme Court several times. There's very clear direction that we are required by law to charge those connection fees. And so we base those connection fees on a cost of service study. That's a very detailed analysis of how we come up with what we charge for biochemical oxygen demand, all of the different constituents that we get sent from the users. And then we're required by law to collect those fees.
No matter what kind of user.
No matter what, yeah. And all of our users are up to speed. The Microns of the world, they all pay the connection fees. That's correct.
Great, thank you. All right, thanks.
And Mayor, I had a question.
Oh.
Yeah, so we have 52 pages of fees here, and I have a lot of confidence in Steve. But as we've just learned, if we approve these, it's done. So what do you want us to do?
It's challenging because, as you said before, there's no line item veto or going line by line. So that's challenging because I think some of the assessments, quite frankly, some of the data I'm not sure is accurate based on what has been collected at one brewery and what they base some of the other fees on. So I guess that is a challenge for the council because this is all encompassing. This is not just a brewery specific issue. So it is unfortunate that it is packaged this way. So, as a citizen, I don't want to take away from other things. But as a representative of the breweries, the fees are challenging.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions? All right, with that, I'll close the public hearing. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you raise your hand earlier. Back open. There's a mic over here on the right side of the table.
My name is Dan Jordan. I live in South Boise. I am an owner of a brewery here in town, and I do think it's extremely important that that this is looked at a little bit. From what I've heard, I'm extremely fortunate also in that we took over an older brewery that has been in town forever that had paid substantial impact fees from the beginning. What I've heard so far from other breweries is that they're being asked or looked at to pay retroactive fees. If that has changed, that's fine. But even with the fees moving forward, from my conversations with wastewater, they didn't have a full understanding of how breweries operate, what waste actually goes down the drain, how to calculate those things. They thought we dumped all of our spent grain down the drain. 500 pounds of grain per batch, which is not the case. That all goes to farms. So I guess to me, if this is going to a work session, that's fine. But then we cannot pass these fees on future breweries if there's still a misunderstanding of how breweries operate as a whole. And without bringing the breweries in and without the right people within the city having an understanding of how a brewery works and bringing in the brewers and bringing in the people who understand the chemistry, the disposal, and what's actually going on, you can't just tell a future brewery, this is how you're going to set your fees if you don't know how they work. I guarantee you they've had these conversations with Micron and with these other industries that they actually do know what they're doing and causing. From my conversations with the people in the departments, that understanding is not there. So to pass this on future breweries without having that full and complete understanding seems a little dangerous to me. That if the breweries today would have had some of those fees put on them, they would not have opened. It would not have been possible. And I don't think that there's a full understanding of the science and what's actually happening in the breweries. And until that happens, I don't think you can pass these things on future ones.
Madam
Steve,
Mayor,
I'm going to ask you how you measure.
sure. So we have we have two breweries that are large breweries that we measure actually at the facility.
And is it based on what they put in, like grain, or is it based
Right,
on
it's based on
volume?
what they're sending to us in the pipeline. So
Volume or
it's
material?
flow, it's the constituents in the wastewater. And so that's how we base our assessment. And then for the smaller breweries, we have a standing list of assumptions that we make. When we started taking on the brewery question back in the late 2017 timeframe, we actually took staff and we went to Fort Collins, Colorado, where they have a number of craft breweries and large breweries, because we did want to learn how this works and try to figure out how do we set up our rates. We try to communicate with the breweries. We've met with them multiple times over the years to talk through these things. If there's discrepancies, we're more than willing to talk through it. We're certainly not perfect, but we're certainly willing to talk through the issues and try to figure out a workable solutions like we did this past Friday, and we'll continue to talk with them.
Madam Mayor, in my limited conversations, I also just wanted to clarify, Steve, we're not actually retroactively taking fees from years past. This is about enacting fees that would go into effect a year from now. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. What we're trying to do is level set what's happening today. We're not
Which is
looking back.
retroactive.
Excuse me, sir. You've testified. I'm actually I need you to turn off the mic.
Sure.
And I'm gonna ask you to head back because your time's up and now Steve is answering staff questions.
Do you still have time? I might have one more.
You had paused and so you didn't use it all, but you were finished and we're not gonna have a back and forth rebuttal right here. I'm gonna ask now, I'm gonna pause. We're gonna do staff questions after the remaining folks here testify. And again, this is moving into work session territory, which I really don't appreciate, given that we're in good faith. My staff is working with breweries. This is about fees for all sorts of users and the amount of stuff people are putting into a system and how you pay for it. Coming up, sir. Anybody else here to testify? No? Oh, no, I know. I asked you, Anna. I'm just wondering if anybody else here is planning on testifying? Nope. Okay.
Madam Mayor, thank you. President Nash, thank you. Esteemed council members, I appreciate your time and attention. My name is Mike Edmondson. I'm a resident of Boise. I live on the bench. We have two breweries. We have one in Boise, 28th in Idaho, and we also have another facility in Garden City. And in our initial, our first meeting with your staff, they were kind, informative, professional, and they did present us with a draft contract to sign. And it did contain retroactive fees, and these were highly concerning. When we got our special use permit and we went before the council in 2016, we paid connection fees in the neighborhood of $30,000. And we thought, that's okay, we got to do it. It's one and done, and that's fair. the initial proposal did have retroactive fees in it. And I've spoken with other brewery owners, and those fees vary anywhere from tens of thousands of dollars to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And while that may be off the table now, I'm not sure. I'm looking forward to work sessions. I'm looking forward to the next August meeting. But frankly, the brewery business is a very thin margin business, highly likely to put most of us, half or more, I would say, out of business. I've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in this community. I've lived here since 1993. I raised my family here. They've gone to schools here. I want to see this to be a vibrant community. And I think the beer scene is a part of it. And while not every resident wants to go to a brewery, a lot do. And it does attract a lot of tourism and attention. It's a good vibe. And I'd like to see that continue, at least at the levels we are. And yes, we do need to pay our fair share. In my professional history, I've been on the regulatory side. I worked for the Department of Environmental Quality for over 14 years. I know these constituents they're talking about, and I have to agree with Dan. There are some misunderstandings about what we may be putting down the drain. We offline a lot of waste. We offline our grain. We offline our yeast. I have a great relationship with a number of farmers, mostly pig farmers, honestly. They take our waste stream for free and they turn it into another saleable product. And I'd like to continue these discussions, and I'm just concerned that passing this right now and including us, I just want to make sure we have a full conversation. I see I have 30 seconds left, and I thank you for your consideration.
Thanks. Anyone further? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing.
Madam Mayor,
Mhm.
is there a motion? Oh. Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the 2025 new increase or approve resolution 345-24.
Second.
Madam Mayor,
We have a motion and a second discussion. Yes, council member?
I think that there's some concerns here. I think that there's also some confusion. The concerns that I think that have been vocalized are important and the city's addressing those, but those concerns are separate from what we're approving today. The city has to make sure that when we're looking at fees and when we're looking at whether those connection fees or M&O fees, that we're charging based off of the usage. And so if a new brewery comes online today, it's important that we get those numbers right. The numbers that are in this increase, I believe, are the correct numbers. And I believe that the city is actively addressing the other issues, which is what you're calling retroactive fees, but that's different than what we're actually approving today. We're approving this for new breweries going forward while we're figuring out a solution for our existing breweries. Separate conversation. Have that conversation in August. Sounds like we're going to have another work session as well. But I guess I would just encourage my fellow council members to not confuse the difference between that issue, taking care of our existing breweries and figuring out what we need to do there, and the actual appropriate fees going forward, which is what I motion to approve.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, thank you. I just want to point out that I have the utmost confidence in our city and Steve Burgos and working with our breweries. You guys are very much an important part of our economics here in the city and what people kind of activities that some of the people in Boise want to continue. We have our commitment to continue to look at that. And I appreciate you, Jimmy, pointing out that this is independent of what we are approving here tonight. Thank you.
All right, clerk?
Morales.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
Stead.
Yes.
Willetts.
No.
Corliss.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
5 in favor, 1 opposed, motion carries.
All right.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, members of the council. We have one more topic to cover this evening. Development impact fees. This is the only slide I have to present. So for development impact fees, we assess fees for when growth occurs for parks, police, and fire related investments. Following 2 years of significant cost escalation, the increase proposed for development impact fees in fiscal year 25 is a more modest 3.8%. These increases were brought forward for consideration by the Development Impact Fee Advisory Committee and were approved earlier in the spring. I'll note that the fiscal year 25 proposed budget includes $3.8 million in impact fee usage. If you look at the slide on the left-hand portion of the chart on the left-hand portion of the slide, you can see that in the last couple of years, we had increases of 9.4%, 13%, and 4%. So this is below those 3 years. If we were to extrapolate what the fee would be next year based on the first 6 months, we'd be looking at 2.8%. We'll continue to evaluate and we would bring forward a recommendation next year based on activity through the entire calendar year. But we are starting to see costs moderate. With that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions on development impact fees before we enter the public hearing.
Madam Mayor, just to thank you to you, Steve. This is a lot. Nope, wrong. Sorry, I'm so tired now. Wrong bearded guy with glasses. I apologize. Thank you, Eric, for everything. And I appreciate just how much time and attention you take into this. And we've had lots of questions on lots of different things. And I just want to echo my thanks. And also for the other city staff that's here late when you don't need to be. We so appreciate you. We love seeing you. Just thank everybody for their hard work. And I wanted to make sure that you knew I was thankful.
All right. Anybody here to talk about impact fees? I'm going to close the public hearing.
Madam Mayor, I move that the ordinance related to development impact fees be placed on first reading calendar for the regular evening meeting on August 13th, 2024.
Second.
Motion and second. Clerk?
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willetts. Yes. Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Great. Motion to adjourn?
Okay, maybe I didn't want to.
Right.
Please.
You can stay here. I'll have you step in for
Madam
my
Mayor,
role. I'm going to step away.
I move
Madam
we-
Mayor, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.